welcome back to Bikes, Beards, and Bigfoot. I am John. As you can see, one of a few things. So I'm here by myself doing this one, flying solo, as you would call it. We'll have that from time to time just because of the nature of the business. Sometimes, we're busy doing different parts of the project, so we can't always link up and do these sort of things. Not to mention, it has been a minute, and I do apologize for that. So we've been super busy here lately, going over all sorts of different locations, and it's been like a short stint here, a short stint there, and usually when we do that, it's like 12-hour days, almost 7 days a week. And so the 1 or so days that we get off, we usually try to rest, recuperate, and get ready to hit it hard again. So as you can see, this is a very different venue. We're not in a hotel anymore. So I am in my camper. As you can see, I got all my Bigfoot stuff here. I'm all about the camper situation when the situation arises. I've actually got a pretty nice place. We're actually in New Hampshire right now. So definitely different than the South Carolina that we were in previously when we came to you. So one of the situations that you're going to find, especially with us, is that we're going to be all over the place. So hopefully, as we do that, we're going to be bringing other content to you. And then those things will be really, really cool. We'll have a very different situation almost every time that we're in a different location, because we're going to be in locations that are great for Bigfooting. We're going to be in locations that are great for motorcycling or both, hopefully, which will be really cool. So speaking of motorcycles, we do have an update. I have an update. So prior to this, we were in South Carolina, as I said. Brandon and I had both gotten really nice dual sport enduros, whatever you want to call them. He had gotten a Yamaha WR125R, I believe is what it's called. And I had gotten the Honda XR150L. Both cool bikes. And we were riding those things all over the place there in South Carolina. We had found a place to go off-roading with them, so it was really nice. We were able to ride to the trails, ride the trails, and then ride back and stuff. That was the whole point of us getting those bikes, and it was a blast. So after that, we had a short stint in Connecticut right before we went back to our home state of Ohio. So at that point, I had my Mustang with me, and Brandon had his van like he always does. So we loaded up his bike inside the van, and we got a carrier from Harbor Freight to put my bike on the back. And I will say that carrier, the larger capacity one, the 600-pound capacity one, I believe it is, awesome setup, really nice setup. It could probably stand to use a little bit more gusseting in a couple spots, because it does, especially if you're going to have a heavier bike. My bike was only a few hundred pounds, maybe 300 pounds. So if you're going to be doing that, then definitely could use a little bit more gusseting, but still a great product. And for $250, I wasn't going to complain at all. So saying that to say this, we went to Connecticut to do a job for, it was only, I think, maybe 3 days we were there. And at the hotel we were staying at, again, I had the Mustang, he had his van. I had to do some work on the Mustang. It started running a little wonky. I didn't like how it was running. So, at the year and mileage, it was due for them coils and coil packs, which ungodly expensive, by the way. So we went ahead and did that, got that all taken care of, and we were leaving literally the next morning. So a lot of times what we'll do when we're working on stuff, we actually just will work out of the back of Brandon's van, which is awesome. It works out great. So we'll work out of the back of his van, and we'll do whatever bike things we're going to do. So we did that, and rather than going through the whole process of putting the bike back up on the carrier and all that, we decided, okay, we'll set the steering lock, still going to cable lock it to the hitch and all that stuff, and we'll load up first thing in the morning and head out. I had gotten down there first, had to put my suitcase and stuff in the Mustang, look over behind the van, and my bike was gone. So that's where we left that. My bike did get stolen in Connecticut. I will say the Waterbury Police Department, shout out to you guys. Awesome job. awesome job. The guy was very professional. He came out, took took the report, did the statement and everything, and stayed in constant contact with me. And I will say, those guys, they actually have a task force there, as hard as it is to believe, in other places, especially like where I'm from. They don't, if you lose a bike like that, you're never going to find it. But they actually have a task force there where they look for vehicles and stuff like that. Lo and behold, I get a call. They found my bike. I was so surprised. I got to say, man, kudos to you dudes and dudettes out there. You guys did a great job. I can't believe you found it. It's awesome. The people, they got arrested, so justice was served. Unfortunately, the bike, the steering lock was broke. It was drilled out on the ignition, and my bag was missing off of the back of it. There was just a bunch of other things. And so it was at that point, I mean, unfortunately the bike isn't like a high dollar bike. So it was at the point where it's like, okay, well, insurance is just going to do what insurance does. So unfortunately right now I don't have a dual sport, so wah, wah, wah. But it is what it is. We'll deal with it. And, we'll get back to doing some fun things and having a good time. I think what I'm going to do, and, of course, Brandon's on board with it, is I want to find me an old Kawasaki Enduro, probably like, maybe like an old KE or something like that. I believe that's what they are, as a KE. Something cool, just something that we can then tweak on, a little 2-stroke, just buzz around with and do the vintage bike thing. Cause I mean, the new bikes are cool. They're great, but there's just something about the vintage bikes that just really, there's just nothing like it, man. I really love the vintage bikes. I really love doing things with the older bikes. Now for me, I'm an 80s baby, so I really love the 80s bikes. I have my 83 LTD, which, currently the old man's doing some stuff too. That should be done here soon. So hopefully we'll be getting some content going on with that. That'll be really cool. I did get the 84 GPZ running. So I'll insert a little video here for you on that one. So the GPZ is running good. It unfortunately has a leaking head gasket, so that's another head gasket for me to get done. So we're gonna have to get that done. I don't know if we're gonna do it on the road. It may be one of those situations that, especially since his dad is kind of the guru with all that stuff and he's willing to do it. I don't mind floating in the cash and getting it done because I know it's going to be done right. And then he has the opportunity of being out on the road. We'd be able to do like a down and dirty, clean it up for the most part, replace the gaskets, get it running. Okay. But, especially with something like that, if you can, you've got it off of there, lap the valves and all that stuff if you can. That's a big deal. And I'm sure Brandon will reiterate this on a future episode, but it's one of those things that if you're going to do something like that, especially with me, with hot rodding or motorcycling or anything really, go big or go home. I mean, I'm really, into the bad habit, I guess you would call it, of, while I'm in here. And so then, a simple repair sometimes turns into a full-on rebuild, but at least at that point, it's done. It's right. And especially with these old Japanese bikes, you do something like that and you're good. I mean, look at it this way. These bikes are 40 plus years old. They're still running, even with, bad gaskets or this or that. Imagine how much, longevity you're going to get out of them while doing all of that work. You know what I mean? So you do all of that work, you get them back right, back sealed up and ready to go again. And you're going to have a ripper, especially that GPZ. I'll tell you, I took that thing down the road. I'm not a speed freak like Brandon is. It's not my thing, and that bike scared me. I'm not, I'm not going to lie. The bike kind of scared me just because you can feel that bike, it wants to go. And the power it comes on completely different than any other bike I've ridden. Now I have a Versus 650 and it does pretty good, but I mean that thing's more of like a I guess you're like a little touring bike. It's a sport tour, I guess they call it, but it's not something that is meant for like power and all-out performance. It does perform well. I mean, they are cool bikes. And that's one of those things, too, that down the road, Brandon and I are really seriously talking about something that we might do. And if I get the opportunity, which I hope I can, I want to be able to take, my Versus and possibly turn that thing into a track bike, which I think would be really, really cool. Brandon has taken his around the track. He said it's a very capable bike. So I think it'd be really cool to see what that bike will do and just kind of turn some heads, because it's not something that you see very often. It's a very oddball bike, and it's a very underrated bike in that aspect as far as performance goes. I'm sure a few little tweaks, maybe some gearing and stuff, we can make that thing really scream down through there. Now, it'll probably, run out of gas at the top end, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles on that. But as for the GPZ, yes, we are definitely going to be building that and redoing everything. And I'm happy to announce, not that it's probably a surprise to anybody out there watching, but we do have a YouTube channel, Bikes, Beards, and Bigfoot. And the first episode's, first video, I think, just the first video is out right now. And that's just me kind of going over carbs and stuff with the GPZ. The old man rebuilt them for me, and I'm kind of going over installing everything, little tips and tricks and little things that I've learned, especially from Brandon, because he's my guru. So especially when we're out here doing this stuff, he is my guru on everything that we do, motorcycling, anyways, and electrical. The dude's a really good electrician. So, but one of the things that we like to do is try to educate as much as we can. And Brandon's really good about that. So like, I will ask the stupid question because I just don't care if I look stupid. And so he's really, really been good about telling me things like, this is why I'm going to do this. This is why I'm going to do that. This is why you want to build this way. Hey man, you want to tear this apart. This is why, because I've experienced this and this and this with these old bikes. That's one cool thing, is he's grown up around these old bikes. So he understands these are the things that you got to look for. So that's really cool. And that's kind of where we're at. So you'll be seeing some more videos on the GPZ coming. We're going to be rebuilding the brakes, suspension, getting the tuning right, getting everything situated. And at the end of it, tires, of course. And at the end of it, we are going to have Brandon get that thing on the track and do some track days with it and see what that bike can do and really compare that kind of performance to modern day performance, and say, maybe even do like a head-to-head with a Versus or something, and see, what a modern bike can do, even if it's not an all-out performance bike like the GPZ was in its time. So I think that'll be really cool. So stay tuned on that stuff. Keep checking the YouTube channel as we get stuff up. So like, subscribe, hit the old dinger bell on there, so that way you know when we post a video up. And then as we're out and about, I do think that we are going to do the enduro thing and be hitting some trails and stuff, especially if we get back to Connecticut. Now, we'll have to figure out ways to really be able to secure our bikes, because when you're out on the road, it's difficult to do. I mean, there's only so much, that you can do. And at the end of the day, if somebody's wanting to take something, they're going to take it. It sucks. And I wish people didn't do that, just go get your own. But here we are playing that stupid game, unfortunately. So that's one of those things that we're definitely going to look at better ways to try and secure things and try to be able to still have a good time while we're out on the road, and maybe even bring you some good content with it, because there's a lot of trails out in Connecticut. There's a lot of trails in a lot of different places that we go to, and so we're going to be trying to get some good footage of that stuff, us riding and learning the bikes and working on the bikes and building the bikes, and that's going to be a good time. And then, of course, down the road, doing some Bigfoot stuff. It's coming. So when we get to the areas, we're definitely going to be exploring that. So on this episode, we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about some like weird animal encounters and things like that. And I do have a story from Brandon that when he and his wife were riding, I think, down to Florida. I mean, it could be wrong. He can correct me later on. That's what you get for not being on this episode. But one of the situations that he ran into, which is really weird, they were riding down through, and he thought it was like somebody's dog was just out running around. And I don't remember where he was at. I know he said it to me, but I can't remember. It was down south somewhere, heading towards Florida. But they were down there riding, and it turned out that it was a coyote. Now, I mean, it's nothing to really see a coyote, running across the road or out and about, but this one was acting really weird. It was doing some things that you don't really expect it to do. In fact, it was actually following them on when he was on his motorcycle. They had stopped for something and then saw it, or it was something along those lines. And so, they're taking off down the road, and he's watching it in the mirror, and it's following him, at a good rate of speed. Like, it was chasing him down. And it was to the point where I believe he said he got to a stop, and the whole time he was coming up to the stop, he's looking in his mirror to see if it's coming up on him. And he basically did the old California roll, because, like, I'm not going to sit here for any amount of time and let that thing catch up to me, because, of course, we were talking about it, and it's, well, I mean, that sounds like rabies to me, that's pretty out of character, I would say, for a coyote to do that. But some crazy stuff. And hey, put in the comments, some of the weird animal encounters you guys have had while you're out and about riding and doing that sort of thing, and there's some really weird stuff out there. I mean, there's definitely been some times where I've been out riding, especially at night. I was going to school. I was working during the day, going to school in the evenings. And so it was a pretty good clip, about 45-minute to an hour ride back home. And, riding the motorcycle every chance I could. There was a couple times where it's like, okay, something just doesn't quite feel right. And I know it's, people get the, get the heebie-jeebies out there, get the woo-woos. But the thing is, people, we have that sense in us, it's buried down deep. It's a primal thing. Like, hey, there's a predator around. You can tell, unless you're just completely oblivious, and some people are. But, and I've not seen it. I've not seen anything like come out of the woods at me and come across. I mean, I have almost hit a couple deer, and that's enough to make the old butthole pucker. Not gonna lie. Because, I mean, that's not something you want to do, especially on a motorcycle. That's, one of the motorcyclist's worst nightmares, to hit a deer. I did hit a big raccoon, huge raccoon. I don't know how it didn't, cause me to wreck. The only thing I can think of is because maybe, at the time I was riding my Harley, and it was heavy, so it was able to get over the raccoon without causing too much of an issue. So, but I have seen and heard things, especially being out, at night, riding around back roads and that sort of thing. But I will say, sometimes you just kind of get that feeling of, I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to just keep on trucking. I don't want to break down here. You know what I mean? You just kind of get that vibe. And there's been some close calls with animals and that sort of thing, but put it down in the comments. What's some weird stuff you guys have encountered? Have you heard something? Have you seen something? Another encounter that I've heard of, firsthand from the person, when I was working at a different location with Brandon, one of the guys that we worked with at the time. He come in, he told me, he's like, man, I was driving into work this morning, and I saw this thing crouched over. It was eating some like roadkill or something. It was up by up close to a barn, but the barn wasn't that far away from the road. But it was an old farmer's barn, had a light on it and stuff. But I could see this thing. It was just crouched down there eating. I was like, oh, is it like a big coyote or something? Especially in Ohio, we have big coyotes. So he's like, no, it wasn't like that. I was like, oh, well, was it like a big dog or something? He's like, yeah, it looked like a dog. I was like, well, what'd you see, man? And he begins telling me what he saw, and immediately my mind went to Beast of Bray Road. Now, if you get the opportunity, definitely look into that. There's some cool stories about Beast of Bray Road. But what he described to me was a scenario almost identical to one of the encounters at Bray Road with the Beast of Bray Road, where it was crouched down like a person would be crouched, and it was bringing the food up and eating it. And one of the things that he really said, because, I mean, he's a pretty fit guy. He's like, this thing was jacked. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, dude, its upper body was so muscular. I was like, well, did you slow down? He's like, no, I didn't slow down. I was terrified. And so, I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, it's anecdotal, kind of, because, I mean, obviously I wasn't there. I didn't see it firsthand. But, you know, and to his credit, he had never heard of what we call the Dog Man, which is another cryptid that we'll discuss on this channel because why not? But he had never heard of the Dog Man. And so when he described that to me, that's what I told him. I was like, man, it sounds like you saw a Dog Man. He's like, what's that? I was like, bro, bring your phone out, get on the Google and look it up. We're sitting there before work and he's like, oh my God, man, this is exactly what I saw. And I told you. He's like, man, I didn't know that something like that was around. I was like, man, there's a lot of crazy stuff. You know, there's like the judge's encounter there in Bucyrus, Ohio, which is what, maybe 30 minutes away from where I'm at. And same with Brandon. So there's a lot of cool cryptid stories in Ohio. There's a lot of motorcycling history also in Ohio. Ohio is actually a really cool place for both the cryptid scene and the motorcycle scene, which is pretty odd, but hey, that kind of helps you understand why it's bikes, beards, and Bigfoot, because we're all about it, man. It's a good time. Another thing, and you guys can probably, you know, get in on this. Do you guys remember when the Rona was going around, the old T virus, as we call it, the COVID, right? So the creepiest thing that I experienced during that time was the empty highways. Have you ever been on like an empty highway at a time when normally it's like rush hour, right? You're thinking, oh, this is rush hour, man, I'm going to get in traffic. Nothing. You might see like one semi out and you're just like, holy crap, what is going on here? It's freaky, man. Cause it kind of takes you back to the, you know, remember The Walking Dead, that show The Walking Dead, they're going down that highway and it's just, you know, desolate. There's nothing. And it was kind of like that. And you're like, man, dude, this is crazy. You know, I happen to be one of those, you know, essential workers, as they call it. Right. So I'm still going to work every day. It didn't matter. And, you know, I'm driving down a highway and there's just nobody. I mean, at first I was like, man, this is cool, dude. I can get right to work. I ain't got to worry about nothing. But then, you know, a few days go by and you're like, man, this is weird. Like, this is just odd, you know? And then you think to yourself, okay, well, what if you had like a breakdown, something like that, and there's nobody around? Then you're just kind of left to whatever devices you have. Now, Brandon and I try to be as self-sufficient as we can because we carry tools and stuff with us. But the thing is, if you think about it, you know, what about a situation like that where you're out going through the desert? Like when my wife and I went out to Texas to visit a buddy of mine from the Army, you know, my son was with me too, but what about a situation like that? You're out, it's desert, it's dark, nobody's around, nothing's around. What happens? You know what I mean? Anything could happen. Anything at all could happen. And then you think, well, that's kind of crazy. But then you think, okay, well, what if there's something out here? Because I know my mind would be going nuts if something like that happened. If it's in the middle of the night, we're out there, we're broke down, there's nobody, there's nothing. Every sound will be something, you know? And that's you know, I guess that's the kind of paranoia that people deal with a lot of times. But, you know, it is what it is. You know, it's just something like that, you know, just you experience it, and, you know, until you experience it, you don't really understand the gravity of it, which is one of those crazy things. And you think to yourself, man, this is just kind of out there, you know, because you got things like the skinwalkers, you got all of these other things out there. If I'm out here and there's something going crazy, what am I going to do? You know? So be able to protect yourself at all times. But it is what it is. You know, is it an irrational fear? Is it just instinct? Are we picking up on something? I don't know. I really don't know. There's too many variables to be able to say this is exactly what's going on. But I will say that a lot of times that when you're feeling that kind of hair standing up on the back of your neck type situation, or the gut feeling, I guess you'd say, of it ain't quite right, you know, maybe, just maybe, it's real. There's something going on. You don't understand what it is, but deep down in those primordial ooze, in the depths of our DNA, it knows it. It recognizes it, and it says, hey, time to go. Let's get going. So that's one thing that definitely are going to explore some more when we start adventure biking, because that's one of the things that we definitely want to do is get some adventure bikes and start doing adventure biking. And I would honestly love to do the adventure bike and then Bigfooting all in one. That way we can go to some nice, cool Bigfooting spots and camp out and kind of go through that. But I think that'll be a really cool idea. In fact, actually, you know what? In the comments, why don't you drop some areas that you guys have gone to and different states and things like that. So that way, when we go to these different states, we got a place that we can check out. And maybe it's one of those things, hey, we can, send out a message like, hey, we're going to be in the area. Let's go do some Bigfooting, or hey, let's all go for a ride, do some group riding and stuff. It'll be pretty cool. So as we travel around and stuff like that, and you guys want to get to know us and hang out a little bit, we're down with that. We like to ride, especially, if the weather's nice. Oh yeah. We want to get the bikes out and get riding, especially if there's trails and that sort of thing. We want to try and do as much of that as we possibly can. But so I wanted to kind of add something to the show here, and it would have been nice to have my co-host here with me, but we'll muddle our way through it together. How about it? So one of the segments that we want to do is I'm going to call it Roadside Confessions, because let's face it, we've all done some stupid stuff, and I just think it's kind of cool. It makes us all personable, and it makes us, because we're all fallible. We're not perfect, and a lot of times you're going to hear on podcasts and different videos and stuff like that, people are, oh, well, I never do this, or I never done that, and blah, blah, blah. So, it's one of those things, like, as simple and stupid as it is, but, how many of us have gotten to the gas station, we're getting ready to go fill up, and we almost drop our bike? Or we do drop the bike because we didn't have the stand out, or we didn't have the stand out all the way, or something like that. It's happened to me a couple times, It's happened to me enough that I always make sure that I am on the stand and ready to go before I even try to fuel. The only other thing I'll do is just stay on the bike while I'm fueling, just to keep it upright. But it's not as recommended. I like to be able to get off the bike, stretch a little bit, and move. But we've all done some stupid stuff like that. And think about it this way. How many times have we done something like, stupid? You think to yourself, man, what was I thinking? What in the world was I thinking? I wasn't. I was just going through the motions, man. Just doing what I had to do, doing what I thought I was doing, and then I was wrong, and then things went all to crap, Because we never want to drop our bikes. We never want to have an issue like that. We never want to have a problem. But, hey, crap happens. You know what I mean? So down in the comments, what kind of dumb stuff have you done like that, where you're like, you just had a dummy moment, you know what I mean? Because we've all had those dummy moments. We all continue to have the dummy moments, and let's face it, I'm not exactly the sharpest crayon in the box. You know what I'm saying? So we have that. Now I want to do a couple more segments. This one I want to do because I'm so into the Bigfooting and the cryptids and everything like that. So we're gonna have another segment. It's called "What Was That?" And so I'm gonna go into more depth on this story eventually, but there was a time where my dad and I went fishing, and we were the only ones there, and we started hearing some things, some very strange things, some very odd things. At the time, we didn't know for sure what it was. At this point, we still don't. We have a pretty good idea what we think it was, but we were fishing, and we got to a point where, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember my dad just kind of turned to me. He's like, "All right, time to go." And he had never done anything like that before. So that kind of made the situation very real all of a sudden for me. So, but that story we'll definitely get into. Let me know in the comments if you guys really want to hear that story. And, let me know if you want to hear it from my dad too, because I'll bring him in and we'll both tell the story of how it happened. You'll get both perspectives, the father and the son who was, young and didn't know what was going on. And so another thing I want to do, and this will be our last bit, and we'll end with this. Our last segment is going to be, rubber side down, right? So as bikers, we've always got the little tips and tricks and the little things that, we do and kind of like help each other out, And so for this episode, I want to just kind of bring it up, hey, riding at night, don't outride your headlights, right? Now, I know that sounds crazy, but it's like, look, man, always be looking at the end of your headlights to kind of see what's coming up. You know what I mean? Don't get fixated on what's right in front of you, and don't just be like, okay, well, I've ridden this road 100,000 times. I know what's coming, because anything can be out there, a deer, a person, a piece of metal in the road, anything. So always kind of, keep your eyes up, be aware, and always be ready to go, because you never know what's going to hit you. And that's going to do it for this episode. I thank you all for being here. It's always nice to have you guys here. Sorry for the delay. We will have more coming out, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a good one.